Hello, I am Stacey Womack. I'm the founder and executive director of Abuse Recovery Ministry and Services, or ARMS for short. And occasionally we bring on guests and we talk about things they're doing or how they're connecting with us. And I'm really excited for our guest today. We have Jim Stanford from Stand United for Christ, and we are partnering with them. And so welcome. Jim, glad to have you here today. And I'm just going to kind of jump right in and just allow you to kind of introduce yourself, just a little bit about yourself, and then kind of how this idea or how it got birthed or how God brought it about.
Yeah, it's an exciting story kind of for us. My name is Jim Stanford. I'm the founder and of Stand United for Christ. We're based in Texas, just south of Dallas, and our heart is to just share the love of Christ with a hurting nation. And when we were studying in my church about Amos and the message that he had for Israel, it struck me that when we're going through what we were going through at the time, through the pandemic, we had cities that were burning, we had riots that were happening, we had division and hatred from every corner. It just sounded like Amos could be preaching his same message to us today. And so as we're kind of processing through that story and what Amos is saying, I was trying to relate it to us, and it kind of came back to Amos was telling them, listen, you're about to lose your nation. You're about to lose, you're going to be exiled from your land because you've turned your back on God and because you're taking advantage of the poor, which is the least of these of their day. And so as we worked through that, it was kind of like, okay, well, if that's the case and that story could be coming to us in America, what does that mean for us? And so our heart just kind of broke for our nation and the hopes that we could turn our nation back, because, had Israel listened to the cries of Amos or Hosea or any of the other prophets, God would have relented for a time, but it didn't. They continued in their sin and they continued to do the things they did. And so as we're watching our nation, face more and more destruction and division and pain, what would it look like for us to respond to the call if Amos was here telling us that? And so that, as we looked at that, it was like, okay, so he called them to turn back to God, but also to not take advantage of the poor, to help the least of these. So we began to say, okay, what is the least of these in our society today? And so we kind of created this list of who the least of these are. Obviously, the abused are top of that list, but we've got addicted, the afflicted, we've got disaster victims, we've got the homeless, the hungry, the orphan, the prisoner, the persecuted. We've got urban missions, we've got trafficked, we've got unborn, we've got veteran, widow. These are the people in our society that are overlooked, they're forgotten, they're neglected. And if we are, as a nation, are wanting to change our nation, it needs to start by taking care of those who are the least of these. So we had that whole list and processing that and saying, okay, what can I do for 14 different categories of people that have a great need is so hard. Well, as we studied this book, what we realized is Amos's call was not to individuals, it was a call to a nation. The nation of Israel needed to change. And so if our desire is to make an impact in these areas of need, to show the love of Christ, to change our nation and our world from the inside out, then it begins with us coming together as a nation. So if believers in our nation would come together to support these like causes, then we could make an impact that would be indescribable. That's something that people have never seen before in our lifetime. And so trying to figure out how we could affect every one of those or those areas of need, it made sense to go to organizations that are effective in meeting those needs today. So what we did is we vetted and partnered with organizations that work with each of these areas of need. So ARMS, obviously, with the abused. We've got some great organizations for all the other areas of need. But we partner with these organizations with the hopes of being able to support them financially, but then also support them by providing people who are willing to work to help however they can in that area of ministry. It's going to look different along every ministry line. But if we can step out whenever there's a call or wherever there's a need, and we can help where we are, then nationally we can make this huge impact. So we have this goal of reaching 1 million believers to come together. And imagine if 1 million believers were ready to serve in our nation anytime a need arose, the impact that that would make.
Right.
And so that's kind of how the Stand United started. We got together with some friends. We created a board that wanted to look at it, and we discussed, okay, what are the areas of need we want to make sure we're looking at? How can we impact them, and what kind of organizations we need to partner with? So we vetted organizations based upon some criteria, like number one, if we're trying to change our nation through the name of Jesus and the love of Jesus, the organization has to be doing what they're doing in the name of Jesus, unapologetic.
Right.
Because there's great organizations out there that do good things, but if they're not sharing the love of Christ, it's not as impactful, and it's not as life-changing as it could or should be. Those organizations have to be fiscally responsible. So we have some criteria we look at to make sure that the money is going to meet the need, that people's lives are actually being impacted. Another thing that we really want to look for, because we want to be a national organization, is people or organizations that are national or expanding national. So every organization isn't national at this point, but they all have plans for expanding. And we felt like that might be an area where we could help them, because as we get members across the country, we'll be able to help them start in those areas, because we'll have people already there ready to help in that particular organization. So that was kind of a critical component, that had to be at least national or expanding, because if I'm in a different state and there's nothing happening in my area, then there's not really an opportunity of service for me. Which gets to the next thing, is these organizations need to be able to give us some opportunities to serve. That looks vastly different for every organization, because like the persecuted church, or the traffic, you can't really go right in the front lines, but you can pray, you can support some of the financial things that they're doing, trying to raise funds and awareness. You can raise awareness in church and things of that nature. And then the last thing is, those organizations need to be able to report to us kind of the impact that the dollars are making. How are they affecting people's lives? How are they changing people's lives? So that we can give that feedback to our members to say, hey, here's what your dollars are doing. Here's some opportunities for you to serve. And our desire is just to bring believers together across denominational lines, because we don't want to get tied up in the things that don't really matter. What we want to do is focus on the love of Christ. And so denominationally, if your message is you need to have a relationship with Jesus, that you're a sinner, that you need salvation, and we can point you to Jesus through loving and through these organizations, then we want to partner with you. So not a denominational thing. It's not party affiliation. We're believers across the nation, from different walks, from different areas, from different backgrounds, that want to come together and make an impact for the love of Christ in our nation that is hurting.
Right. Absolutely. I really think the idea is really creative, because it's touching so many different areas. And I know generally people go, oh my gosh, there's all these different nonprofits out there. They're all doing this really great work. Which one do I give to? And I think as believers, it's our responsibility to seek God for what he's called us to. And as a nonprofit ourselves, that doesn't receive any government funding, that isn't really highly grant dependent, or really dependent on the individual giving of individuals, churches, businesses, things like that. For us, it's like your average person out there. And studies show that the lower middle class give more per capita than those who are wealthy. Those are, they really become almost a foundation for us. And one of the things I really loved about Stand United for Christ is the fact that someone who maybe doesn't feel like they have a lot of money, but they can give a monthly gift. And I think what is it, $15 or $16?
16, yeah, $16 a month.
$16 gets to help every single organization. And you might think, well, that's not much. Or Stacey, while it's really counterintuitive to have somebody who's doing fundraising for all these other organizations too. But the reality is that we're a part of this. And so if Stand United for Christ can meet this goal of 1 million people, and 1 million people are giving $16 a month, and we get $1 of that each month, that's $1 million a month. I can't imagine what that would mean. I mean, what that would mean for not just our organization, but all these other organizations that are doing things nationally.
Yeah.
So,
and that's really kind of where the heart came from, was a dollar isn't much to an organization, but every dollar counts, right? That you always hear
Right.
that anything you can give matters. And so if you're given a dollar, it's making an impact. But if you're partnering with 1 million believers that are given a dollar, and you're impacting every one of these areas of need $1 million at a time each month, the impact would be extraordinary. I mean,
It would be
if these
huge.
resources are available, yeah,
Yeah.
it would change our nation.
Every organization that's already doing good work and nationally, expanding national, and we are national in the work that we do. I mean, it would just change so many things and be able to add more and be able to empower more. And we are very much a volunteer driven organization. So we train people to lead our programs in their church or in their pregnancy center or whatever, wherever they're at. So, I just really love that idea of doing that. So, what have you found like have been the biggest obstacles for you so far? Because I mean, you haven't been going real long in
Yeah,
this
we just
process.
started in March of 22, so we haven't even been a year in. And I think our biggest obstacle is letting people hear the story about what we are and what we're trying to accomplish. Because you can pass our information on a Facebook page or a website and see and go, oh, that sounds like a great one. But until you hear the story, until you really know what we're trying to do, it's hard to even understand or comprehend the difference that we can make. And so one of the things that we're trying to really do is get ourselves in front of churches that will allow us to come speak and share. We want to partner with churches so that churches that maybe don't have the opportunity to make an impact in all these areas can make an offer of their members to be a part of it. And it's similar to what you said. A lot of people would go, well, why would a church want to invite you in when they're trying to get tithes and offerings as well? But we're trying to offer a vehicle where that church can help make this impact. And we'll be able to give feedback to churches that would say, hey, your members have donated this much. Your members have done this many hours of service, or this many, taken part in this many service opportunities. Because again, we're not trying to take away from anybody. We don't want to take away from any of the people that support ARMS. What we want to do is be a vehicle to support ARMS and what ARMS is doing in all of our partner organizations. If somebody comes through us and starts giving their money and then starts working with one of our organizations and feels led to go directly to them and get involved with them because their heart changes, we love that, because we're helping build the kingdom.
Right.
Separate from what we're trying, it's not, for us, it's not about the dollars. For us, it's about the impact that's being made.
Right.
And if we can bring believers together to reach all these organizations, to help all these organizations make the impact that they're already making, and just improve what they're doing and expand what they're doing, then we're all partnering together to bring about the kingdom of God. Right.
And it's not a competition. And, in the faith community, even churches, if they feel like they're competing with other churches or nonprofits competing with other nonprofits, it's not really what it's all about. It takes all of us. The need is so great here in the US that, we need each other, and everybody has their role that God has called them to touch certain lives that maybe we wouldn't touch personally, but they are able to touch. And, and I know that even for me in my growth of learning and understanding about giving and having been, my husband and I had a lot of financial struggles earlier in our marriage. And, just so that made it hard. Like when I became this executive director and now I'm having to ask people for money when I've been a person who's struggled financially, I had to be taught how to see this differently. And really what was taught to me was that if I don't ask people to give of their time, their resources, their talents, then I'm really robbing them of the opportunity to grow in their relationship with God. Because these are all things that we hang on to very tightly and are not so easily let go of, but God calls us to, and everything good that we have comes from him. So whether it's our talents or our time or our resources, so it's, I think that as believers can understand that generosity in those different areas is really about their intimacy with God and their growth in God. I think that really makes a difference. And like I said, I just think the opportunity for someone to say, this is so cool. I get to impact 14 different areas of need in my country has got to be really fulfilling for some of those people that you already have who are doing that.
Yeah. Yeah, and we send out a monthly impact report through email so people can actually see the impact that the dollars are making. We typically highlight one of our partner organizations in a short video, and then we give statistics on how much we've raised, how much we've provided to each partner, and then we give links for different opportunities each month where people can serve. And so we're trying to give feedback, and that was, you're talking about having tight money and things, and that was one of the things when we started. I'm like you, I have a hard time even asking people for money, but I feel like $16 isn't much for somebody to be able to impact all these areas of recognized need. And we tried to cover just about the gamut of everything that we could think of. I think you could think of maybe a few more, but there would probably fall into a few of the categories. But one of the other exciting things that we found too is a lot of the organizations kind of overlap in areas that they're dealing with. If you're dealing with abuse victims, you're probably dealing with a lot of single moms who are coming out of relationships. And so
and also you've got the trafficking, there's overlap with that, so there's definitely overlap in different areas. Yeah.
Absolutely. And we find that in a lot of them. Even our widow organization helps widows, but it helps people adopt through the helping of those widows. So the adoption of the orphan is also included in that, even though we have a different partner for orphans. So it's just this huge overlap of these areas of ministry that are vital to really helping people beyond the situation they're in to become closer and have a greater knowledge of who Jesus is, and see that love just shown through believers that want to come together and do nothing but help them and show them love.
Yeah, I know that for us this year, we have been really focusing on doing a better job of like keeping statistics and in what states and how many, and it's not an exact number because we can't get everybody to give us their numbers. They're not tracking them very well, but we're trying to do a better job of that. And so we started even just, for the year end, gathering our numbers on I'm telling our administrator who's helping me with this, say, this isn't right. I know this isn't right. And so we start thinking about where else are we serving? What else are we doing? And so now we have numbers I can actually send them to so that you guys can have them. And it's pretty amazing the, how widespread and how much God has allowed us to do. And we're probably considered a medium-sized organization. Our staff isn't real big, but just as far as like our income, what we have in just based on our income, we'd be considered a medium size. Our board chair, who's just done his secession from a very large nonprofit, says we are a teenage organization because we're all still wearing multiple hats. But one of the reasons why having something like this and having more people giving even a small amount monthly would make such a huge impact to us as an organization. So, and I forget where I was going with that, but I guess the idea of this, now we have a better idea of who we're serving, how many we're serving. We're focusing mainly on the women who have gone through domestic violence and abuse or currently in it, whether it's been a phone conversation or through other vehicles that we use to train and provide services for. And we only expect that number to go up. And so we're trying to do our best to count a unique count and then our overall count so that organizations like you that we're partnering with can say, again, this is what this organization is doing. This is the impact this organization has had. So while we are much older than you guys, we celebrated our 25th anniversary this last October. On the day I actually started 25 years ago. So that was pretty exciting. And we've served over, 37,000 women nationally and internationally. So that's pretty exciting. When I started, I had no vision for that. It was completely God's idea from the beginning. And he is just taking this and moving it forward.
Yeah, well, we're so excited to have the opportunity to work with you guys, and our prayer is that through our partnership, we can get you into more churches, to more states, into more areas, so that that number is just exponentially increased, because we know how real the issue is out there and how many people are hurting. And so just to be able to offer support to individuals that are going through that kind of suffering is it's nothing short of what we should be doing as a
Right.
church.
Yeah. And, that's something that we very much care about too. And we feel like, especially since COVID and all that time being closed down, and all the turnover within churches because of that, that we had done a lot of church staff trainings, but now we feel like, oh my gosh, we're going to go out and do it all over again, because we've got all these new staff members and new people coming in who haven't had this training. Plus, there are so many more who've never had the training. And so that's a way that we can partner in, with those people nationally, as well as offering ways for them to also lead or offer the programs that we have right in their own community, their own church or whatever. So that's just really a blessing to us. So how do people like get connected with you, and how do they do that?
So our website is su4christ.org. And you can go on there, and it gives you a little bit more in-depth information about us. There's our nonprofit partners page that shares every area of need and every partner that we have. It gives a link to their statement of faith, so that you can see that they're in line with the general thought that I talked about earlier. But then also a link to their webpage, because everything is 100% transparent. We want you to know who you're supporting, the impact that they're making, and the kind of organizations that we're dealing with. Through the vetting process, we fell in love with every organization that we're partnered with. The heart to serve, and the heart to just make an impact.
Right.
Couldn't even describe it, how incredible it was. So we have that listed on that website, but there's a donate button where you can click, and you can set up to do a recurring donation each month. In order to be a part of what we're doing, you can, even if you can't afford the $16, you can sign up to get our newsletter, and where you'll get the information, you'll get opportunities to serve. So maybe if you can't do the money right now, you can serve. But we felt like with $16, it should be easy, because, people subscribe to so many video services that are more than that every month.
Yep.
It's
really two people going out for fast food. It's a one meal,
yeah,
practically these days.
Once a
Yeah.
month.
Yeah.
So we set that low, but that's one way, is to join us there. Serve with our partner organizations. The reason we vetted them is because they're doing great work, and they have opportunities, various opportunities. They're like I said earlier, they're going to differ by organization, but there's something you can do with any of them. If it's joining their prayer network, if it's going out and physically helping them, if it's inviting them to your church to do training, or to set up a program at your church, or if it's allowing them to help your church set up programs for people. There are ways that you can serve each of these organizations. So that's a big one, because for us, the service aspect is as important as providing the dollars, because people need to see believers coming together, loving them, not just feel the impact that the dollars are made with the organizations that are receiving those dollars. We can also be invited to share at your church, or to share with your life group. We've committed to, wherever the invitation comes, we'll go. And so we can come share what it's about, give you a little bit better presentation with a video that introduces our partners, and sort of just gives that call out to the church that we get to visit, or the life group that we get to visit. You can follow and share us on social media, St. United for Christ. And the church answer, you can pray for us. And I know that's a church answer, and it sounds pat, but the truth is, everything needs to be bathed in prayer, and the more prayer that's poured into this, the more impact that we'll see, because God calls us to pray, and He asks us to pray. And so
I
please,
think
if you can't do anything else with that.
Excuse me. Yeah, I think people underestimate prayer. I mean, we have a weekly email prayer list that we send out with praise reports and a little devotional kind of thing. And, especially when I think about domestic violence and human trafficking, I mean, we're really in the enemy's camp. And there has always been a really strong spiritual warfare, and we need people to be praying with us and for us, because it's very hard. It's hard, really hard work. And the hands of God are moved by prayer. And I think so. I think that people think, well, I can't give, but we have a lot of like older people on fixed incomes, and they really, especially now with our increased cost of things, they've said statistics show that those lower class people who don't have the financial income aren't giving as much. That's dropped because they're just trying to pay for gas or for food. But the prayer is just as important, if not more important, because again, God can do anything, right? So it's us joining together in that. So you mentioned a few of your partners that you had. What are some of the other areas that you touch on? Because I know we mentioned trafficking, you mentioned single moms, widows and orphans. So what are some of the other areas?
We have the addicted. We work with Hope Center Ministries. They're based out of Oklahoma, and they're in several states now. They basically help churches set up addiction recovery programs and homes even. We work with the afflicted through mercy ships, who actually most of their work is done around the world, but they give great opportunities to serve, and they also do training of local doctors. And so when they're in an area with their ships, they help train locally so that when they do leave, there's still some ministry going. So some amazing stuff going on there. Disaster victims. A
lot of need for that these days.
Convoy of Hope is our disaster victims. Whenever there's an issue, they're there. I know right now they've got people in Ukraine. They've served every hurricane that's hit in the United States, so they're all over the world, and wherever the need is, they're running there. We work with a group called City Team for the homeless. They're doing some amazing things. They're one of the ones that's sort of beginning to expand, but isn't quite there yet. For the hungry, we've got
some men from City Team.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, we've served some of their men.
So City Team is our partner for the homeless. And like I said, they're in, I think, three states on the West Coast, and then one kind of over in the East. But they're one of the ones that's wanting to expand to other cities. So hopefully get there. Hungry, we work with Feed My Starving Children. Great organization that distributes food. Really trying to fight the death of, I think statistics show like 6,200 people die a day from just malnutrition issues. And that's actually a solvable problem. The food is there, it just needs distribution. So we work with them to try to get food distributed around the world in the areas where there's a great need. We work with Orphan through Backyard Orphans. They actually train churches to do orphan care programs. So they're based locally here, but they've gone around the country to train different churches to help them. So that's another one where you could invite them to come to your church to share about their program, so that maybe your church could start a program.
Right.
Prisoner is incredible. We work with God Behind Bars. They've got this incredible ministry where they help churches set up basically satellite churches within the prisons. And they can tie families together so that the families are hearing the same thing. So when they're talking, they can share. And then when they get out, they're already a part of a church. So the recidivism rate is incredibly impacted by that.
That's great.
We work with the persecuted through Help the Persecuted. The group is Help the Persecuted to help the persecuted. They work with persecuted Christians around the world, mostly in the Middle East. They're expanding as well. But that's one of the probably big areas that people don't realize there's that much going on around the world, but there are literally Christians that are dying for their faith. We don't face that kind of pressure here, but around the world they do. And so we work with Help the Persecuted. They rescue people, they provide for their needs, they help them in whatever fashion they can and whatever they're facing. We work with a group called Urban Missions. We work with a group called City Takers to help and urban missions, which is they do an incredible job of inner city ministry. They started in Atlanta, Georgia. They've expanded to Florida, and they're beginning to work in some other cities. That's another one of those that's small at the point, but we can help them expand around the country. But the work that they're doing is amazingly impactful. I've spent some time with them in Atlanta, and all of the things that they're doing are just incredible to reach kids. I mean, the inner city, and they work with colleges, they work with senior citizen centers, they work with kids that are into hip hop on the streets. They work with the homeless. I mean, they're doing some incredible work in urban missions. For trafficked, we work with the Tim Tebow program foundation. I'm sorry, Tim Tebow Foundation, who is doing some amazing work in the area of trafficking. They have set up homes to help ladies out of that. They work closely with police and area officials to help stem the flow of trafficking, and they're doing some incredible things there. For the unborn, we're working with a group called Preborn. They support clinics around the country with ultrasounds and with training on how to lead individuals to Christ that are going through the pregnancy crisis. We work with veterans with the Warrior's Journey, and they're an organization that provides resources for veterans that are dealing with a myriad of issues. One of the biggest things is helping stem suicide. So they have some suicide hotlines and some people that'll counsel in that area. They have opportunities for couples where the soldier's returning, for them to have a couples retreat to restore marriage issues and things like that. So they've got some incredible things going in that area. And then for the widow, we work with a group called Both Hands. And Both Hands is one for the widow and one for the orphan. What they're trying to do is help people raise funding for their adoptions by helping widows. So they'll do a fundraising widow event to help a widow in their area, and then that'll help fund the adoption. So this one's actually one of those crossover organizations as well. But those are the areas, and those are the organizations that we'll work with. And every one of them, I kid you not, is incredible. The work that they're doing, the impact that they're making is eternal.
That's awesome. And I appreciate that. And just to put our little plug in there too, and what we're doing, just so that people don't know, our largest program is called Her Journey. It's a free victim recovery or survivor recovery program. Women can join at any time. We have virtual options if we're not in their area. So we have one for every day of the week, except for Saturday right now. And we also, we serve that in Mexico, Canada, Kenya. We've trained some people in Uganda and Nigeria this year. And God is just, that's really our mothership of what we do. But we also work with those who use abusive behaviors from a Christian perspective. And really, it's a discipling of people in how to love like Christ loves. So we work with men, and we are certified here in the state of Oregon, where we are housed to provide those services. And so we get referrals from community corrections and from Department of Human Services, and also for women who use abusive behaviors who also experienced abuse. Those are also court mandated or deferred sentencing, and we get voluntary clients as well. So those are kind of like the three programs that we offer. And then we do all these trainings outside of that. And then we train leaders to lead, to do what we're doing. That's how we duplicate ourselves. And we vet our people as well. And then we support them and give them ongoing education and ongoing materials and support so that they can do the ministry that God has called them to do. Because by ourselves, we can only touch just a few, but as God calls people to whatever ministry, whether it's one of those you've mentioned or ours, it's a way for them to expand and have a greater impact on the world around them. So any final comments that you'd like to make before we wrap this up today?
No, I mean, I want to thank you for the opportunity just to share with you. I do love how your organization works from both sides of the aisle. It's incredible because we need to stem the issues that arise as well as help those that have gone through it. And that doesn't make light of the people who've gone through it. What it does is it tries to help show love to the people that have, for whatever reason, opted to be that side of it. But just to replicate that around the country and give opportunities for other churches to be part of that is incredible. And so I commend you for that. And I'm in awe, honestly, of your organization and all the organizations that we work with. And it's kind of funny because I feel like we're just kind of a paltry thing that gets to be a part of all these great organizations that are doing all these great things. And so, for that, we thank you for sharing with us and partnering with us in that regard. But I would just say, if anybody's listening, you don't have to join Standing United for Christ, but what I would ask you to do is get involved somewhere, show the love of Christ, because there are people hurting everywhere around you. And if you don't ask for God to show you those people and you don't get involved in their lives, you're not going to have the impact that you could have. And you're not going to show people the love of Christ that they need in this hurting world. We can change our world. We just have to be willing to open our eyes and to step out and to involve however we can.
Yeah, I was just thinking earlier this week that God didn't put us on this earth to vacation. He put us on this earth to do his work and to be his hands and his feet, his mouth, his arms to others. So for those of you watching, if you want to get connected or take a little bit deeper look at Stand United for Christ, their website is su4christ.org, or you can look up abuserecovery.org, which is our website. But I agree with Jim that no matter what you do, that you are looking and seeking God for what it is God is calling you to do, because ultimately, when we stand before God, that's what it's going to be about. So have an eternal impact with the choices that you make in life. So I just want to thank everybody for joining us, and may God bless you and guide you. Thank you.
Thank you very much.